Hello and welcome back or welcome to the channel. I'm Loudguns and today we're continuing with our breakdown of the Overdrive Initiative. These missions are releasing weekly on Fridays in phases, and this week's was a bit of a bumper episode as we've got both Phase 4 and Phase 5 to contend with. I've got quick guides for all the other phases of Overdrive, so if you haven't done any of the others, check out my other videos for those. If you're here for these missions, then grab a cup of tea while I roll the intro, then let's get into it. Just a quick disclaimer before I even start this video, I'm sat here in Scotland and Storm Kathleen is doing her very best to blow my house down, so if there's a lot of howling of wind in the background or if some of my garden furniture tries to relocate itself, then I apologise for that, but there's not too much I can do. So these missions released yesterday, and while I had time to play through it, we had a great Org v Org event last night, so I wasn't able to get the video out the same day. As we'll see, some of these ODI missions are going to be perfectly fine to solo, while others will require a bit of teamwork. So if you're looking for friends to play with, then please do come over and say hi on our Discord, the link's just in the video description down below. To me, Star Citizen is a game that really comes to life when you play with other people. So while I completely respect that solo players have a place in the game, it is also great to see some content and challenges that are more tailored towards groups of players. One bit of really good news before we look at the phases, CIG have really listened to some of the community feedback about this event, and as well as the free upgrade to the F7A Mark II, it looks like players who complete all of the phases will also get a set of Xenothreat medium armor. And that's exactly what we were asking for in our Spectrum post. I'm not delusional, so I don't think that we directly made this happen on our own. I think we did add to a weight of feedback about the rewards for this. And I think it's really cool that in-game events will lead to in-game rewards that everyone can get some use out of, rather than just the right to spend hard currency. So first up, let's take a look at Phase 4, Xenothreat Surveillance. All of these missions narratively follow on from one another. So in this mission, one of the suspects captured in the recent attacks have revealed that Xenothreat are looking to remotely access comm arrays around the system. We're being enlisted as part of the civilian defense force to go and reboot the comm arrays and prevent any bad guys from reconnecting during the reboot procedure. As per usual with these missions, you'll find them in the general tab of your contract manager under priority. Although since there might be some competition for the mission spawns, particularly in these first few days, it can be quicker to wait for it to pop up on your HUD and then press the left bracket to accept from there. Mostly this episode is space combat based. The comm array in question can be anywhere in the system, so you're going to want something that's handy in a fight, but also capable of eating up the kilometers. For this mission, I found my trusty Vanguard Sentinel to be a perfect option. I've gone with full laser repeaters and upgraded all of the components, including the QT drive to mil-spec A. Don't go full noob suit in terms of personal gear though, since there is a bit of EVA work to be done by at least one member of your party. Make sure someone is equipped with at least a helmet, gun, spare ammo, and ideally a tractor beam. When you arrive at the comm array, you take care of any bad guys that are already on site. This was a bit variable for me. The first one I did was all quiet, but the other two had some enemies already there. Probably just late spawners from someone else's mission. Since I was running solo and needed to hop out of my ship and leave it floating, I didn't want anyone taking pot shots at me, so I just cleaned up first. You'll then need to access the interior of the comm array. The entrances are on the band at the point where the two wings of the comm array are attached. Just make sure that you park nice and close, particularly if you're running solo, as once you reset the console inside, the Xenothreat fighters are going to start coming in waves, so you don't want to take too long getting back to your ship. Xenothreat have rigged the inside of the array with a bunch of trip mines. There's no bad guys inside to contend with, but you're going to want that gun I told you to bring for clearing these out as you EVA inside. The terminal you need to access is down at the base of the interior. Remember that from the moment you interact with the console, those fighters are going to start spawning, but you'll be safe until you trigger the reboot. So be as cautious as you like at this point. If you want to go slow and take lots of the mines out so that you can zoom back without worrying, then go for it. I personally found that I could save time and ammo by just clearing myself a decent path to and from the console. Once you've triggered the reboot at the console, just get back to the ship. Here's where a tractor beam can be useful, as in tractor mode it can be used to leash to assist you in EVA, and make you quite a bit quicker. Of course, these missions are completely shareable, so there's no real need to go it alone, and if you're running this as part of a party, you can always have friends at the ready outside, prepared to engage the Xeno fighters as soon as they appear. Ultimately, you will need to take down all of the Xeno threat enemies, but while the reboot process is running, the most important thing is to take out the vanguards, who will be marked on your HUD. These ships are attempting to hack back into the comm array, and if their bar fills before the reboot completes, then you'll fail the mission. Usually you're going to have to deal with 2 or 3 of these incursions before the reset's finished. And after the server is rebooted, you'll be tasked with finishing off any remaining bad guys before the mission will complete. Keep in mind that the comm array does have defense turrets that will assist you, so do try and drag the mix of sabers, mantises and arrows that Xenothreat throw at you towards them. I managed quite comfortably on my own, but over the 3 missions I ran to complete the phase there was quite a degree of variability in terms of how many enemies spawned. In one I only had to deal with 6 or 7 ships total, and they all came neatly in 2s and 3s. In another though, I got swarmed with repeated spawns of 4 ships, and at the end I had to fight off no fewer than 16 enemy fighters and mantises. The worst case scenario though is that you just fail the mission due to the counter hack going through or failing to deal with the bad guys, in which case you can always just attempt it again until you get 3 out of 3. And if you are struggling with this, just look to bring some allies with you. It's great to see how the community comes together for missions like this, and you'll easily be able to get a pickup group going via global chat, or you can pop into a Discord like ours to find friends to help you out. And while it's very much optional with Phase 4, it's going to be certainly something you need to do for Phase 5, Emergency at Career. This mission will pop up once you've completed the 3 missions for Phase 4. In terms of the narrative arc, it turns out that the whole thing with the comm arrays was nothing more than a distraction just to lure away the first responders. Xenothreat's real target was Security Post Career, the Crusader security station orbiting the moon Cellin in the Crusader system. Once again, this is a mission that will pop up in that priority tab, and since the location SPK is just one of a kind in the system, you might have to wait a while, or server hop to find a server quiet enough to do it. That's particularly going to be the case in these initial days of the mission being live, but over time things are certain to quiet down a bit as more of the player population has completed the phase. This phase is pure FPS, so while you'll need a ship to get yourself across to SPK, it can pretty much be anything. Our group bundled aboard a C1 Spirit since we wanted to bring a few boxes for loot, you'll see why in a minute. And we made our RV point for this Seraphim station over Crusader. This just allowed us to set respawns nice and close to SPK. In terms of equipment, I would definitely recommend a set of heavy armour, decent weapons for close quarters combat, I've gone with my trusty FS9 and Custodian combo, and also bring lots of ammo, med pens and again a tractor beam. This mission does require a hacking key, but you're guaranteed to find one on the site so you don't really need to bring this with you. When you get to SPK, you'll need to first abort the hack that's in process on the main terminal in the central room. Your HUD will then light up with mission markers for various hacking keys that are dotted around the place, so if you haven't got one already, you'll just go and get one of those, and then you can insert it into the terminal to start your own hack, forcing Xenothreat out. And during this time, waves of Xenothreat troopers will come in from the elevator spawn closets around the station, in numbers that, quite frankly, are going to overwhelm any solo players attempting the mission. So for this one, teaming up is going to be pretty much essential if you want to complete it. The hack might stall and require an override at certain stages, so have one of your team keeping an eye on that terminal. I've been reliably informed that it's most likely to stall as it moves between each of the 5 blocks of the hacking bar. So if it's busy in the middle of one of these stages, it's probably going to just be okay, but you just want to watch it as it ticks over between, say, block 2 and block 3. If, like us, you're keen to get yourself some of that sweet loot, the heavy armour in particular is really cool, you can even have a designated loot goblin, grabbing bodies with a tractor beam while the others cover them, and running back to the ship. Due to the sheer amount of bad guys spawning, the server cleanup is working overtime. You might find, particularly at the end of the mission, while it tries to reset the station for the next players coming along, that a lot of the bodies and the guns and stuff just disappear. So this approach can make it more reliable that you make it off with a bunch of the good stuff in the end. Of course, this is where you can also just bring yourself a heavy backpack, so you can grab things like helmets in between spawns. Just make sure not to get caught looting, as a bunch of Xenothreat baddies spawn right next to you. And once the hack has run its course, you'll have helped regain control of the station, and this mission will complete. You'll have about 15 minutes to leave the station before you're trespassing, as is pretty standard in things like bunker missions. So that's it for phases 4 and 5. I have to say, I quite enjoyed the 4th mission, but mission 5 is definitely the top one for me. Particularly when you're running it with a group of your mates and it's just non-stop shooting and covering each other. Plus, I've always just really loved SPK as a location, and it's great to see more gameplay associated with it. As with previous weeks, I think it's really cool to see a story-driven mission evolving within SC. We had a little bit of this before with the Arlington gang chain, but this one to my mind is a great advancement since it merges different types of mission. And this is ultimately all going to culminate in the Xenothreat dynamic event, which is one of my favourite out there. Obviously stuff like this is still a little bit bare bones, and I've got to agree with a take I heard from Salty Mike a couple of weeks ago, that the narrative aspect would be greatly enhanced by some scripted voice lines telling you the story, as opposed to relying on you reading it in the mission descriptions. To be absolutely honest, I've tended to only really stop and work out what the story is when it comes to sitting down to make these videos. So I think it could just make it a bit more prominent if there were a few voice lines at the start of each mission when you accept it. I'm sure that this is all stuff that we're going to see in good time as the game develops more. If you enjoyed the video and think I earned it, then please do consider dropping a like and hitting subscribe if you haven't already. I am planning to do a stream using one of my alt accounts once all of the missions have been released, and basically try to do them all back to back, so stay tuned for that and more. All that's left to say now is thank you very much for watching all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you next time.